Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Adobe Live. My name's Ryan Selvey. I'm very excited to be joined by Jannah Holder. How's it going? Good morning or good afternoon.
Yeah, so afternoon it's 4 p.m. here, but I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's just a little bit past noon. We're streaming from Brooklyn here. We've also got some friends over on the West Coast as well. So we are all over the world. Very excited to hop into stuff. For anyone who has not seen your work before, do you want to give a quick introduction of yourself?
Yeah, so I am Jannah, the owner of Digitals by Jannah, which is a strategy-led branding business. So whether it's new branding, whether it's a rebrand, we work with next generation founders on building their brands with everything rooted in strategy. So I'll essentially come up with the foundations of the brand, conduct the market research, and then we'll build that into a visual identity, and they'll get everything ready at the end, like ready for launch, ready for in-person activations. So I am very collaborative in my process, and we work together literally from the beginning right to the end, usually on a retainer basis. And then on the side, I also like to do a bit of content creation over on my Instagram. I'm branching out to TikTok and YouTube as well, so you can find me there. But yeah, I do content helping next generation creatives with tips, advice, resources, and then I just show like client work and essentially everything I'm up to on a day-to-day basis.
Wow, quite a heavy lift there.
Yeah.
Definitely not just one small thing here or there. I went ahead and pulled up your website on the screen, digitalsbyjonna.com. Got some awesome, fun personality. Lots of, well, obviously, is your favorite color pink?
Yeah, if you're gonna
I'm right
tell.
there. I'm right there. I feel it. I love your integration between like emojis and then also kind of like the structural vectors of everything, but also like mixing in things like your signature. The interactivity of the entire scroll process is really cool. So it's just really reflective of how you really are paying attention to not just one small thing, but the big picture wherever
Mhm.
you are, like whether it's, supporting people across all verticals or just, even paying attention to your own website. It's very, very cool. Um,
Thank you.
Taking a look at your portfolio too. Lots of really cool stuff. We have anything that in particular that you kind of want to point to? We'll be working on Let It Melt today, right?
Yeah, so that is a dessert bar based in Belgium, and I'll go into like the context, everything like that. But I think it was one of those brands where I felt like there was a turning point in my process and like my client approach, and I was really pleased with how it turned out, and I felt like I accomplished like a new set of skills, and yeah, I just took my kind of process and branding to a whole new level. So I thought we'd look at that one today, and I can show you guys how I go from the strategy to the launch at the end and transferring the files over to the client.
Amazing. And I know that we have a jam-packed. We're here for the next like 50 so minutes. So we got some time, but I also know that on our agenda and our schedule, we've got a lot to get through. So I don't want to hold you off too
Yeah.
long. We are also live on the live stream. So just hello to everyone from like Paul and Alix, Joshua, Cody. Thank you guys all for being here. If you have questions for Jana as we're getting into stuff, please throw it in the chat or just nice compliments. Everyone likes to hear nice compliments. So this is supposed to be interactivity. Please, by all means, throw it in the chat, and I will be sure to pass it along to her. And that way, it's a two-way conversation. It's not just a recorded video. If you are watching the replay, though, we will make it worth your while. There's plenty of stuff to check out. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna share your screen now, and maybe we can hop into it. All right. So we're looking at Illustrator here. We've got the Let It Melt, which is it Malubar? Is that how it is?
Mm, I like to say Malo. I don't actually know what it
Malo.
is,
See that? No,
but let's
that's the
say,
right thing. That's
yeah.
the right thing. Definitely,
Let's
no doubt.
say hello. Yeah. So that's just like another, well, I don't even know what language that is, but maybe French, but it's basically those really indulgent lava cakes that everyone loves. So like the
Oh, love them
chocolate
so
cake,
much.
and then in the middle is like all the gooey
Yes.
chocolate inside. So a very like guilty pleasure dessert.
I mean, no guilt to be had. I love it so much. Now, obviously, this was for client, so you don't have necessarily a say over dessert of like which one you're definitely showcasing. But would you say that chocolate cake is your favorite dessert?
Oh, yeah. Do you know what that and like custard. Is custard a big thing in the US? I don't know if it is.
No, it is not.
No,
That was a
missing
surprise for
out.
me for you to say custard. But very valid. I feel like it's a very English thing to like.
Yeah. Cake and custard. I literally had it last night. I'm gonna have it again today. It's my favorite.
Yeah, no, I definitely it's either cake or brownies for me for my top favorite. Oh, but ice cream's
hmm
also there. I digress. Let's get into the design. What are we looking at? We're looking at the brand story, right?
Yeah, so I've just pulled together a bit of the key information that helps shape everything. So, yeah, context-wise, letter mail, basically, the structure of the store is there's like the chocolate mellow and it's all built on a customizable basis. So you'll have your lava cake and then the fun comes into it with choosing your own toppings, your sauces, you can choose from a set menu. So it's a really like playful brand and we want it to feel like really memorable because the experience in person should feel unique. So we want the branding to feel unique and memorable to reflect it exactly how we want. So if we just dive into the strategy content, so this is everything that would ordinarily go into the strategy. So I'd say this usually ends up being around 40 pages long. But we've
Oh,
got the things
really?
like, yeah, it gets pretty long. I don't know if that's because I'm a perfectionist or I don't know, probably it is because of that, but I do really like to take my time. We usually spend like a week. I spend a week with my clients on the strategy process because once you have that nailed down, it means whatever's happening afterwards with the visuals will follow very smoothly. There'll be limited revisions. Like originally, I did used to just start with the design, but I found that's when there was more like back and forth. Whereas now that I lead with the strategy-led approach, that means that we've nailed everything from the beginning. There's no like guessing games. It's not me thinking, you know, whatever's good is good. It's not the client just basing off of their favorite color. We're working
Right.
together like super collaboratively so that we can come up with something that's strategy led and it's perfect for the audience. So like we've got on here, we dive into the audience personas. So that's literally putting yourself in their shoes because we can get caught up in, like our favorite color is pink. So everything's going to be pink. That's like what I do. But would that be suitable for, your target audience? Would a customer really want to come to store if it's super pink? Would they understand that's the context of the brand. So when you break things down like that, it means like you've eliminated a big problem that a lot of businesses encounter at the end when they're like, footfall is going really low, no one's coming in, I'm not, selling enough things, but it's usually because they didn't have strategy to begin with. So once we have that all out of the way, that means we can dive into like the creative direction.
Yeah. And so,
So
did you go to uni for this, or is this things that kind of like you've like taught yourself? Because you're very knowledgeable in all of this, and you're very uh, I don't know, well versed in all the different directions to come from. Like you're not just coming from one direction, you're coming from like 20 different directions. Where'd you learn all this?
yeah, I feel like I was worried about how I was going to explain all of this because I feel like I have like a million thoughts in my head.
We're
But
following.
I
That's not a criticism by any chance. I'm just impressed. That's all.
Okay, good, good. I don't know if I'm waffling or not, but
No,
no,
you're
yeah,
doing
I did
wonderful.
great. I did go to uni for typography and graphic communication. That said, I didn't do branding because I didn't really like the teacher that was leading it. So I was like, I can't spend like 2 years like doing it with a teacher that just like I don't know. I think our teaching style just didn't gel with me very much. So
Yep.
I did like packaging, I did like magazine design, and then when I graduated, I decided like, oh, I'm just gonna keep running my Instagram account and see what happens. And then that's when I was like, I'm gonna niche down to brand design. And then I basically just taught myself everything. Like I knew nothing about strategy other than like a few basics. So the last like year and a half, that's how long I've been doing like full-time freelancing. I've just tried to teach myself as much as possible whilst also working on client work. So like I was saying, like I feel like this project was a turning point when I was really like confident with the strategy side of things. And yeah, I'm just trying to like perfect my knowledge and everything. But I feel like I'm in a good place at the moment where I feel confident when I jump into a brand and things like that. So I'm glad that's making sense to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so we're looking here, we're looking at the values that you're building out for this, which is creativity and community.
Yeah.
Obviously unique to each one, or each client that you have. Also, so many nice comments in the chat. I'm seeing that someone's saying one of my favorite designers out there. People are excited about custard tarts. Josh was also talking about how their mother would make custard when they were a child.
Mhm.
Also, Hidden Layers is saying custard is fire. So I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for everyone that I underrepresented custard. But I'm glad chat is following it up. Also, Joshua's loving your work. Hidden Layers podcast is saying brava, Jana. Cody's also saying some nice compliments as well. So people are loving you.
Thanks,
You're
man.
doing great. You've got awesome stuff, and people are excited to learn from you. So keep doing
Awesome.
what you're
Cool.
doing.
Thanks, everyone. Make me feel a lot more confident. This is like my first live stream, so yeah. But yeah, values wise, so like I said, like there's a bunch that goes into the strategy, but if we just pull from the values as our basis, then we can lead into the creative direction a bit more smoothly. So creativity wise, like I said, the whole thing is about, customizing your Merlot. So if we take that as a basis, it's a very creative process. And if we just go through this, we say our Merlot combines a classic recipe with a playful modern twist, making it accessible on the go. This creativity is fused with our retro, cute, and distinctive brand vibe to create something truly memorable. And then hand in hand, that goes with community. A big part of the business model is making sure that this brand is like super aesthetic, it has photo-worthy spots. So when people are going in person, they want to share it on social media, and that cuts down the cost of marketing. So it needs to be like a really shareable brand so it can become a go-to destination. So if we literally just look at what we've come up with in the creativity value, there's beloved, there's playful, modern, retro, cute, distinctive. Those are all keywords that we're going to want to reference when we're building the mood board. And then when you pitch that to the client as well, because they would have gone through the strategy, when you get to the creative direction, you need to make sure you're linking back to that. You don't just want to be saying like, oh, we can include these shapes because it's fun. You want to link it back to what you built out in the foundations and the values so everything links together. And then you would have also explained that in the audience personas. So if you're
And where are
making
you
sure that
sourcing these from? Are these like things that you kind of like have like a list of words that you're normally then like applying to different brands, or kind of are you kind of like word salading whenever you're like looking at a brand and then being like, okay, these are the ones that are really sticking out to me? How do you land on these?
I feel like it's a mix of a process. I usually start with a client filling out a discovery questionnaire. So from
Oh,
that, I'll like pinch some ideas from them. So this client, like she came up with creativity. So then I usually just ask for one word. I don't expect them to bridge it out because that's where it can get a bit confusing for them. So they'll give me the word like creativity, then I'll base it off of the brand foundations that I've already come up with. So those are like why the brand exists and what the mission is. Then we can easily create these value statements, and then I'll, write all of these out, and then we'll go through them together. And if they want to change anything, they can. But usually these are pretty on the nose because we've come up with the foundations already. So I feel like now that I've got experience like building these values, they come a lot more like naturally to me and I don't really have to reference a list. But I think you'll also find like common themes of like creativity, community, and things like that across like brands because it is like a common shared value. It's just about how you like bridge those apart, if that makes sense.
yeah, no, and I love the idea of an intake form. I think that's something that a lot of people probably skip over, and that's a really cool kind of like onboarding process that you have. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think people could all learn from.
And then yeah, we just have like hospitality and authenticity. It's pretty much what they say. So the business model needs to make the customer feel valued and appreciated whilst enjoying the indulgent dessert, and then let it melt wants to stay authentic to its founders. So it's founded out of a pure passion for dessert to something within the family. So if that comes across, like desserts are very like warm, homely thing. Like someone said in the chat, like their mum used to make them custard. It's like that kind of family, like mum makes a dessert sort of thing. So if that comes across, it kind of feels like nice and nostalgic. So we can make that come across in an authentic way for the customers and it portrays the founder, then everything comes together like very nicely and it feels like a community, which then goes back into our other value that we already established.
Fantastic. So then we're looking
And
at our mood
then
board.
yeah, this is our mood board. So we'll just run through a few quick elements that are key. So I'll usually break this down into like 3 pages or so. Not like super wordy or anything like that, but I'll break it up into like the general overview, the typography, the color palette, and then any elements. Because before I used to kind of just do like one overview, and I think that's where like a disconnect could come from the client. Not that like it wasn't good enough, but they need it to be explained. Like we have to remember that we're the experts in the situation, not them. So instead of like using a bunch of jargon, it's easier to just break it down for them in simple terms. So yeah, if we just take like the typography, for example, here and here, like we can see it's all like display typography, it's bold, it's scaled up very nicely, and it makes it feel approachable at the same time. We've got like these soft curves, some of the letters. So remember, like I was saying, this is all about an in-person experience. So you have to think about like the signage, for example, the menu, you want it to be super legible. So when we have a display font, you can achieve that very easily, but we don't want it to feel like, super like vintage or anything like that, or just not very warm. So I've explained to the client in the strategy that we'll have like little elements like this where we can curve things, curved corners, and that can help it feel a bit more soft. Um, and then we have things like the mascot. And as soon as this client came to me, I knew like I wanted to do a mascot with her.
Mascots are
So
trending. I mean, like at
yeah.
2026, like 2025, it was on the uptick. Like 2026, people are loving mascots, and I've always loved mascots. Like, even the little teddy bear for laundry, or the brawny man. Like, if there's
Hmm.
an excuse to have one, like, please, by all means, integrate it. Also, I'm seeing in the chat that Paul is saying that inboarding forms are mega important in their line of building and designing websites. So yes, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely important and good call out.
Yeah. And then yeah, a lot of the colors will come through at this point. So like we're talking about this form, the client would have said like pink and brown. I know that was like one of her things from the beginning, and I can usually tell based off of that whether we need to scrap that at the beginning or if it's something we can explore. And obviously, like chocolate is brown, so of course we can use a brown. But it was like, where does that pink come in? So when we went into the audience personas, we were looking at exactly who they are, how they would feel about the pink tones. Is that something that would speak to them? Is it something that would push them away? So we came up with the idea to make sure it feels balanced. So the core colors will be the brown and the pink, and then we can bring in other tones. So I would have explained to the client, I'll show the color palette to you guys in a minute, but I explained to the client how we can bring in other colors to make it feel balanced, and inclusive to everyone. And
And
then
I also want
one
to say
thing,
that like brown is not an easy color to navigate, especially if you're going to have other things. But like to your point, yeah, it's chocolate, so it's like very important to have.
mhm.
But then I think that pink is such a natural complementary color to, or like a peach, to kind of like make it
Yeah.
feel way more luxurious, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like you said, there's that line where it is a bit tricky because you don't want the brown to look like muddy or like off-putting and like not capture that chocolatey warmth. So it was like
Yeah.
about taking that color palette and making sure that all the other elements, like the typography and the, illustrations, help bring it to life. So then, like I said, like I then bridge out like how we can use the assets. So I was showing her different shapes like this and how we can use illustrations to bring everything together. So that's like established from that point. And then the client will give me feedback for that. If we want to change anything, we'll do that before we move on to the visual direction. So then by the time we've got onto the visual direction and I'm pitching a brand identity, we're both on the same page. The revisions are going to be like minimal to none. Um, and
Fingers
I
fingers
think
crossed.
fingers crossed, yeah, I do say that. But to be fair, since I've like fine-tuned my process, I usually can get a project done like at the brand identity stage within like one revision, and there's always two included. So, so far, so good with this approach.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that's definitely a testament to your skill and your expertise. Joshua was saying that brown is one of the most difficult colors to work with. Yeah, because I think it's interesting. It can definitely be super unappetizing, but also very appetizing. Nate is also saying that, pardon, there are a few lovely brown colors. It is important to have a clear brown, which I agree. Yes. Also, welcome to the chat, Nate. Good to have you here.
And then if we just jump up to the color palette here, so this is what we came up with. So like I was saying about we came up with the soft pink and the brown, obviously linking to the chocolate and the Merlot. So we set these up as our primary shades. But I always do like to say to clients, shades could change a little bit. Maybe, how we're applying them could change. Maybe they'll change from like a primary to secondary. I'd always recommend including that note in the visual, like in the creative direction stage. Because you just never know how colors could interact at the end or
Yeah.
like when you're working in progress. So yeah, we've got these as our primary shades, and then the toasted oat is just a really nice neutral. I think every brand needs a good neutral like base.
Toasted oat.
whether that be like a like this toasted oat or like a off white. I'm not like the biggest fan of like having a stark white or having like a
Yeah.
complete black. I always like to fine tune them a little bit. So we've got that neutral here as well, which came in handy quite a lot with a lot of the packaging. And then we have these colors here that keep the brand inclusive so it doesn't feel like super pink and really cutesy because we want it to have like that retro vibe. So we've come up with this like powder blue, avocado whip, and tangerine, and these two will act as our secondary colors. So that's around 30% of time we're going to apply that. And then the tangerine is 10%. Now the tangerine is 10% because I don't want it to feel like Halloweeny when you're like
Yeah.
combining like do you know what I mean? There's a
Yeah.
fine
Yeah.
line with orange sometimes where you don't want it to feel like it's like a pumpkin or like I just feel like it can come across very Halloweeny. So I made
Yeah.
sure to say like that's only used 10% of time, to add a
And
bit
I
of
think
like
that you're
visual
great
interest.
at the presentation of these in multiple factors, right? So not only are you finding a creative way to represent these colors with this cool kind of like clover shape, you're also adding words that are descriptive and exciting for a dessert. So like avocado whip or toasted oat or tangerine. And then also you are playing with the color of the type even on top of it. To then
Yeah.
like you're not just doing a stark white when you're doing the malo, or however you said it. I forget how I messed it up. And I think that that also just goes as part of like how you're really good at presenting this and showing to the client, walking it through. And that's probably why another reason why you don't have revisions when you're getting past a certain point. So just worth calling
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, and it's definitely something I've picked up along the way. Like originally I would have just had like a square box with the text on top, but I felt like when you present it this way, they can also see how the colors interact. And then if we go back to our mood board as well, like I've pulled that shape from this one here. So I'm explaining exactly like, oh, why we should have these assets and what they'll do for the brand. But if I'm able to convey that at this stage already, then it just gives them more like confidence in what I'm saying. So I've already, presented that up here. And then to go a step further, I like to show key color pairings, so how the colors will interact with each other. Like I said, some colors going forward might not feel too good. Like even these oranges over here, like I said, that might feel a bit Halloweeny when we come to it. But it's nice for the client to see how the colors can interact. And also for me, it's good like for testing accessibility and just making sure that I'm not just choosing colors based on, how good they look together. It's about how they interact and how they'll look printed and things like that.
We have a
And I
question
also do,
from Nate even asking, how come you're using six colors? And then so obviously you get a lot of different variants from here. Do you normally do six? Is that kind of like the range that you're going in? Do you have more or less sometimes?
I mean, it can vary. I think that depends on each brand. Before I did feel like I had to have like five, for example, on every single brand, but that doesn't always work. So when I started looking at it as what works for each brand, that's when it'll vary. I will literally never go above six. I don't think I've ever done that unless it's kind of like shade ranges.
Hmm.
In uni, they were very kind of that they drilled into us like a cap on how many colors and how many fonts you're using with each other. So I feel like if you have six, it's a really good sweet spot. Like I said, I don't really go above that. And then once you like give them their usage, like two primary colors, two secondary, for example, one neutral, it's not like you're going to be using them together all at once. So it feels like a lot. You're going to be applying them to a certain percentage. And I just found that's what works best for me. And yeah, like I said, it can vary sometimes. So it kind of just depends, yeah, on a brand by brand basis.
Certainly. I'm sorry, I
So
know I
yeah,
keep derailing you. There's just so many questions in the
all
chat. Larissa had
good.
also asked the same question about color, so I wanted to make sure that we touched that. But I also love how you
Yeah.
have this once again, very beautifully presented, nice way of showing collections. Like a lot of times people will just put squares next to each other and it doesn't necessarily make sense to a client, but then like when you're looking at it like this,
Yeah.
like you're kind of imagining it as a poster, you're imagining it as a sticker, right? And seeing how it goes.
Yeah, I feel like when you're showing it as more of an element or an asset, it gives them more confidence. I think, like I said, it's easy to forget that usually your clients aren't well versed in design and they don't really understand things. So when you can show them how things interact or how they could look together as an asset, then it just makes it exciting from the beginning. Like I always want my clients to feel, even at the strategy stage, where like essentially that could be a bit boring because it's just information and it's, do you know what I mean? It's not like the branding part of it yet, but there's still ways to make it look visually interesting and to get them excited and feel confident in choosing the direction going forward. Because even when I pitch this to the client, I always give them two mood boards, like at minimum. So one will be like maybe something that they expected, something that maybe our audience would expect, and then another mood board will be pushing the boat out a little bit more. So yeah, it's all about giving them that clarity at this stage. So then once you move forward, they're not like, oh my God, I chose the wrong direction or I don't feel confident. You want to give them that confidence from the jump, essentially.
Oh, fantastic. Also, I'm seeing that also in the chat that Laura is wondering how you figure out the color values for print. Do you do a lot of print stuff? I mean, I guess you are. I guess even with this is print, right? So,
Yeah, so yeah, like I said, it depends on a brand to brand basis, but I think that's definitely something that I've been trying to understand more. Like I said, I've taught myself everything in a year and a half, essentially. So I was using Pantone quite a lot at the beginning, and then recently I've got like a Pantone book, so that helps me with color conversions and things like that. And I do a lot of printing myself. I feel like that's the best way to check your print and how colors interact with each other. So that's what works for me. I know people do it, differently, but I just find literally converting my colors, seeing them like on the Pantone already printed on uncoated or coated, so I can give that recommendation to my client. That helps eliminate things. Like sometimes I'll print and then be like, these colors are not interacting how I would have thought, even with like a CMYK preview. So yeah, I think it's like a trial and error process sometimes, especially with colors like this. Like we've got some depth and variety going on, so it's good to check everything and whether you're using that as an accent color or a secondary color is how that's going to come through and like visually take up space, especially in like a physical store setting.
well said. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And then if we just jump into the typography before we get into the designing. So, like I said, in the mood board, we've got that, retro kind of type, like display typefaces. And we're going to inject some personality by having some gentle quirks, some character and charm. We want it to feel super timeless, whilst remembering that we don't want it to lean like too feminine or overly trendy. I do find that's something that you can do subconsciously where it feels a bit feminine because you're using like the pinks, and sometimes like when it's a female founder we're like both in a certain bubble, so it's just making sure from the beginning you're remembering who your audience is, and that's exactly why you do that strategy stage at the beginning. So yeah, if we jump into our other document, we've just got let it melt,
Let him
simply
melt.
type out, super fun.
Also, like fun. Did they come to you with the language already in place, or did you kind of help them build that out?
So they already had the brand name, but there was some wording that we wanted to interject, and like on some of the mockups that I come up with for like signage, just so they can reference. Maybe they want to take that forward. Then I came up with a few things. I can't remember the original slogan we came up with because she didn't have one, and then I came
Mhm.
up with one and it worked like pretty well, but she wanted to change like a few little bits of it. So we tried and errored that and like checked how that would look within the logo suite as well. So sometimes like they'll come to me with it, or like with this client, she didn't have anything for a tagline. So I came up with something and then we bridged out into like copywriting and like call to actions and things like that.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. Definitely a
So
collaboration. I like how you work so closely and you're not like kicking down the door and being like, I'm making all the decisions. You're really working with each client on a very personal level.
yeah, I definitely think there's that finding that balance where you feel confident enough to lead the project, but you want that input and the collaboration, because I think when you're first starting freelancing, you just want to say like yes to everything. You just want to do what the client wants, but over time you'll learn that just does nothing but shoot in the foot because they usually don't actually know what they want. So if you can lead the project and still make sure that they have a voice, and even sometimes like a client will say, I want to do this, and I'll be like, I don't recommend doing that. Sometimes I won't explore it to a certain extent because I know how that would look and I understand from their point of view why they think it'd be a good direction. But I always remind my clients in the feedback, put yourself in the position of your audience rather than your personal preference. So it's just finding, like I said, that good balance of, leading with your professionalism and your expertise, but also allowing them to be heard and to try some of their ideas, where necessary and where it fits.
Like the
Hmm.
idea that people are like, I know what's best and I'm just going to like strong arm through this. And it's like, well, no, you got to remember that like at the end of the day, you're like working with the client and,
Yeah.
you need to also have confidence in yourself to be a leader, but you also need to have confidence that like it's a two-way conversation too at the same time. So,
Yeah, exactly. So coming to the logo, like I said, we wanted to come up with that soft, like kind of retro font. So we've got Balgan here, which I don't know how many fonts I actually tried for this brand. Obviously, in this case, I'm making it look super easy. Like I just know what font to use. But
mhm.
there's a lot of like trial and error that goes into it. But we came up with this font because like I said, it has that nice, like classic soft retro look, but it's really good readability wise, scalability wise. We were thinking about it on signage. The letters are super legible, so I
Yeah,
really
I'm really
liked it.
liking the cuts into the T, the cuts into the M as well. Like it has some really interesting choices around um, the sides there, which is really cool.
Yeah. So then it literally depends on the project, but sometimes I'll do like a little bit of customization. So in this case, because we wanted some like, character and some curves for that warmth and softness, because right now it does feel a little bit harsh. Like we have the curves here and everything, but where we have these slants, they're super nice with the cutouts, but they do feel a little bit too strong for the brand. So little tweaks like this where you can just make something a little bit curved helps. Make sure you have that like approachability is a big part of the brand. So just balance that out a little bit. It's yeah,
And
I
also
feel
makes
like
it so it's uniquely your clients, right? Like, so it's not just straight up just a
it's
typeface,
not,
which like some
yeah,
clients find success in, but also finding um, the way to also make it, I don't know, unique.
yeah. Because I think there's a line where there's like over personalization where you're doing like a bit too much, but there's
Hmm.
also like you don't want people to just be able to be like, what font is that? And then type out your logo and then they've just got it. And I've had a client come to me recently and their problem is someone's literally copied their branding because it was
Yeah,
super easy to replicate. They just found the font. So when you even have
that's
like a little bit
frustrating.
of personalization, that helps eliminate any problems like that.
Yeah, a little brand security there. And I know as you're working through this as well, you're kind of fine tuning. Laura Jane wants to know, would you say social media is your best client outreach strategy?
Yeah, 100%. Um, I don't really do like word of mouth or like in-person networking for my business. Like I've never really done that. And I think that's because whenever I have done like more personal projects, I don't enjoy them as much and there's like that lack of professionalism. So from day one, I've literally had, let's say, 99% of my clients from social media. And that's how I fell into this, like accidentally anyway. Like I was just posting like passion projects. And then my first client came to me and was like, can you create me a logo? And I thought, well, I might as well like give it a go. And then from there, it just grew into something bigger. So I feel like, yeah, I said to someone recently if I had to market myself a bit more like old school and like do like billboards and like network, I don't think I could do that. Like, I don't think that's for me. So I do think social media is a massive like stepping stone and like gateway to getting clients. I think you can
Absolutely.
actually rely on that, to be honest. I don't know if that's like a bold statement, but I've been able to rely on that. So I think anyone can.
Yeah, that's great. Um,
And then, so yeah, we came up with that color palette, and I've recently, well, I say recently, it's been like a year now, but I originally wasn't using libraries, which I don't know why I was never doing that. I'm so like in my way when I learn how to do things, and then I don't explore like new things. And then I think I used libraries like a few years ago, then I stopped, and then I started using it again last year, and it's been a lifesaver, like actually a lifesaver. So if you're not using libraries yet, then take this as your sign. So. I've put
yeah.
like all my colors in here. So if you just had like this, for example, and then you clicked at the bottom, it'll give you like an option to, yeah, like fill color, and then it'll add it here. And that will help us at the end with Adobe Express as well. So it's also super helpful. Like say when you drag in your logo, for example, and then you're using like a mockup in Photoshop, if you use that file in Photoshop, if you have feedback like, oh, I want a different brown color, it will update across everything rather than you having to go like across each platform, update everything, which stupidly is what I used to do.
Nate's saying that libraries are a lifesaver. I'm also seeing some other great questions in here. Um, Laura Jane's asking if you adjust the logo like this, do you implement the same changes to the headers if they have a website? Um, so is it something that you're like uniformly updating everywhere?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
And when you make these updates, especially like to type, like are you then using
Yeah.
an SVG to then have that as the header, or are you relying on the typeface for the header?
Um,
I would assume probably an SVG or an A, like a vector. Like you're giving them a vector logo
yeah,
on their website, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. To be fair, I don't think that would happen just because we would have signed everything off. So I don't think a client has ever come back to me being like, can we change a color or anything like that? Because
yeah.
we'll make sure everything's finalized that way. Say, for example, they did come back to me and they were like, can we change a shade of something? Then, yeah, we just have to update the SVG files. But
Mm-hmm.
usually we've like finalized all of those things so we can like reduce anything like that happening.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, for that kind of retro vibe, I'm going to do a like shadow. Um, and I'm just going to do these separately just so when I do the blend, they don't all connect weirdly. And then also when I put it all together, I can see like how if I want to move things individually, because say these two are connected, it's going to be annoying when I'm trying to move everything up. So let me just copy these layers. Probably should have done that before.
Also seeing some questions about accessibility in the chat. Paul saying that they're a disability activist and find that many people can't see branding as you and the designer and client do. How do you deal with this and help all parties? So when you're approaching this, are you kind of like looking at your logo in different angles? Are you like scaling down the size a lot? Are you seeing how it works on like many different contrasts and um, different types of colors when you're approaching these?
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely something I still need to learn a bit more, like how to go about the best way. But I have been teaching myself how to check like accessibility and tools I can use. Like there's obviously like a lot online where you can now just drop in your logo and check accessibility and it will tell you even how like the colors interact with each other. Like I was saying at the beginning with the color palette, when I'm able to check those things, then it just eliminates any of those problems when I come to actually putting a logo together.
Yeah.
But there's also cases where, like, obviously, when I'm doing a logo, I need to make sure it's scaling well. But yeah, if you have like any tips or recommendations on how I can improve on doing that, if there's like certain methods, I'd love to hear that because there's definitely more I can learn about going about that way because I obviously want to always ensure that my work is accessible. But yeah, I feel like that's not necessarily my strong suit yet.
And you know, there's always room to learn more. And like you said, you've been freelancing. You said like a year and a half, right? Um,
Yeah.
so the amount of roadway that you have been able to cover in a runway that you've been able to cover in just that year and a half is really remarkable. So needless to say, um, there's always keep learning, right? And also,
Yeah.
as people like Paul in the chat says that they're disability activists, it's always helpful to hear you call for that in the chat, and also for us to approach. But just messing with some spacing, it looks like.
Yeah.
And you used what the blend tool for that drop shadow, right?
Yes, my favorite tool. I probably use it a bit too much, but
I think it looks great. I think it works well. It has a smooth transition between the two letters where you're not getting that choppy in between. I think it's looking really good.
and then I would say I don't think I go about things like the most conventional way. I feel like I do sometimes go about things like the long way or I don't know when I when I like co-work with other people and then they're like, "Oh, I do it this way." I'm like, "Right, I could have been doing it a lot quicker." So
There are
if
always 10
you
different ways
yeah,
to do the same thing in any Adobe program at any given time. Um,
yeah.
so have no fear when it comes to that, because there are 10 right answers for every problem. I will say we've got about like 15 minutes left or so. As time is flying by, I know we're going through a lot. So I am going to go ahead. I just want to go ahead and pull up the schedule for you guys. So we have right now the start of our day right here. It's the beginning of a long day of wonderful streams here on YouTube. Right after this, we have my creator and designer news show called File New. We're going to be covering lots of really cool stuff. So make sure you guys stick around for that. You'll go right into that right after that. And then when that ends, we'll be going into the Cinema Collective with Ashley and Courtney, also known as CA in LA. They'll be talking all about filmmaking, post production, and behind the scenes as they do because they are filmmakers in LA. Tomorrow, we've got a loaded day filled with photo creator collaboration, conceptual portraits, dynamic stage visuals on the spot with Maggie Lopez. And then Friday, make sure you're following us on TikTok because we've got some animated carousels with Angel White and also some podcast magic all back on YouTube on Friday. You can find this schedule always in the schedule section of the Discord, which is yours for the perusing. And then we also have all these different channels for you to talk about the shows when we're offline or get resources. So back to you, Jannah.
So yeah, this is our secondary logo with the stacked composition. And then I'm going to quickly show you, I literally did not realize how time went really
That's
fast,
how
but
it
I'm going
goes.
to
We're
show
having a
you
great
guys.
time. We're
I
learning so much,
know.
and
I can't believe
anything that we
it.
cover is great. So we can always update descriptions. We can always update whatever. So let's just make sure that we're touching on things that you find are important, right?
Yeah, so I'll show you guys how I like to pull in illustrations that I've done on my iPad because I'm not the best in like just, drawing on the screen and it coming to life. Like I do love to sketch and whether that be on paper or my iPad. So this is like a sketch of the mascot that I did on my iPad. So if you literally just click image trace, then it will vectorize it for you, which is a very helpful tool. If you expand that, then you remove that background if it wants to let me. Then
The fidelity of it's
you
great now.
want,
Like years ago, it would be
yeah.
not necessarily one to one. Now it's so crisp. I used to
Hmm.
not have it part of my process because I couldn't rely on it, and now um, I'm like, oh wait, I actually can use image trace now.
Yeah, literally that was the same thing as me. And then I think I was actually in an Adobe meeting and they were saying like how they've improved it. And I literally ran back to it and haven't looked back since. And I just think it's just so much easier. Like I said, I love sketching and things like that. So rather than then having to recreate an Illustrator, I don't have to like mess with all of
Absolutely.
that. And then yeah, the select tool is obviously great for just picking up those tones and changing it. So this is something that I would do for all of my illustrations. And then we'll do a cheeky, here's one I did earlier. And I'll then build it into something like this where we have the actual, let me expand those, oh, where we'll have like tones and shades and all of that
Yep.
added to bring it to life. So like you can see we have, okay, those ones didn't want to expand, but we'll have like the tones, like the shade just to help add some depth. And then things like this, like we have like a thickness into the thinness, just so it feels a bit more dynamic rather than just some, flat lines.
Right.
And then, yeah, on these, I added some borders, and then that became an asset across the board. So if we whip all the way over here, here's our full like brand illustration guide. So as you can see, we've got all of them mocked up with the colors, so the accent colors, the secondary colors, and the client will be provided with all of those files. And yeah, it just creates a really fun asset where now we have like this border effect and they can apply that on a bunch of different things, whether that be, like the icons themselves, on packaging. And it just makes sure that we're not solely relying on that constant pink and brown. Like we don't want that to feel like very overdone. So this is a fun way of interjecting color and making sure the brand feels inclusive and not just like really cutesy.
Right. And that was going back to your point also being like a bit of like being aware of gender subconscious like associations.
Yeah.
Obviously we want to lift up women owners and embrace that they are women owners, but also at the same time you don't want to alienate your demographic by men being silly and being like, oh, that's not for me, that's just for
Yeah.
ladies. Which also is on men in their own way, but also there is something said about what does a brand portray and how does it communicate with the society, and unfortunately that's something that you all have to like you all, I mean, like everyone, has to like, stay conscious of as brand designers. So yeah.
Yeah. And
And this
then I
brown
quickly
is
just
looking
put it
great. I know we were
together.
worried about it, but it's just,
Yeah.
it looks so good.
It's like a nice, like deep chocolatey, shade. And then even with like shadows like this, we've got like some more depth there. So the brown, yeah, definitely came together very well. And then I quickly just showed you guys, I did that super quick. I don't know if that was too quick, but how I turn it into a pattern. So obviously with a lot of the brand needing a lot of in-person touch points and like packaging and like even the box that you get them low in, we thought it'd be
Yeah.
really nice to have patterns like this. So yeah, we came up with this one, and then I'll also show you guys. We came up with the alternate one with the accent colors. So whatever that feels appropriate, we can use some splashes of color here and there. So the client will get both of those along with this one in like SVG, Illustrator, PNG, basically every file that they'll need, they'll have to hand. And I think that's just always a nice like little touch to have. Um, like patterns bring everything together. I do always love to include a pattern.
Yeah, no, I think that's wonderful. And also like it can be used as many different like implementations, whether that's like wrapping or tissue paper or backgrounds or anywhere else where you can really kind of incorporate it, wallpapers into your branding.
Yeah.
I think that it's a good resource to have. Um,
So yeah, so this is a great example of showing that like we've just got this box mock-up. So obviously with a lot of brands that come to me, they're new brands, they literally don't have anything when they come to me. So it's great to show everything in action. So say for example, box packaging. So I've just got this one with the tape. And then like I said, you want to have your library ready to go. And then we've got all of our files that we have from our Illustrator document. And like I said, if I have to update anything in Illustrator, that will happen here. So what's the best color to use? So we have two patterns here. So one with the pink text. Is that not going to let me? Or is it going to be super blurry? Let's copy that from. I don't
it
know if
might
other
also
people
just
have
been
that.
just because it was resizing it down for to fit the proportions of that. You are, yeah, you're 272% zoomed in right now. I know.
Will that? Oh, I feel like that's super blurry.
Because it's 567 pixels by 128 pixels is the size of your canvas.
Yeah, well, that I'm just thinking, let's see if we save that, how crazy that's going to look on here.
No, that works, right?
Yeah,
See it?
I feel like if I
Yeah.
scaled up the brand pattern canvas, then that would have been clearer. But here's just like a quick example of how them pitching it to the client that they can see the tape in action. Because sometimes when it's
Mm-hmm.
just flat, it's like that looks good, but how is that going to look across packaging? And then that helps you obviously sell it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then
Also
what's the
remember
other?
that the client, like we said earlier, is like the client isn't necessarily, creatively brained. So like while we might sometimes look at something and be like, oh yeah, I can picture that as whatever as long as I just speak to it. Um, there is the very real reality that sometimes like, you know, they're like, I'm focusing on business production and managing. I don't know how to visualize things in my head. Um,
Yeah.
and there's all different types of brains. That's all we love. It takes a team, right? So, um, it's all about working with people.
So I'm going to move this logo to the front of the box. So it's about like putting all those assets together that you've built and showing them, like I said, in action, because that obviously, like my client, when I showed her all of the mock-ups, I'll show you guys like a preview of everything I put together. She was
Mhm.
just like in love. Like she was like, I didn't even know like I would be getting all of this. Like even when you explain everything that they'll get in the package, it doesn't really mean everything until they see it. So once I
Right.
put everything together, she was just like so excited to see how everything is going to look. And like for them, it's just an idea, and for you, it's like you're building everything for them. So like things like this are really nice to put together. And then, like I said, I'll show you guys the brand in action. So these are all the mock-ups that let's take that out of trim view because it will go a bit weird. Yeah, these are all of the mock-ups that I showed her so that she can see how everything interacts. So I like to make sure that I cover a few categories. So like over here we have, like the story mock-ups. So this could be like on social media like Instagram. and how she can use like those fun little brand icons we put together, how those colors should interact. Like I've used the ones with the white borders here as it looks really nice on the pink and with like the image, the contrast is really good. And then things like how the store could actually look, putting the pattern on the window was a really nice touch
That's
that she loved.
cool.
She hadn't thought of that before. And then when I was like, how about putting it on the windows? That's something she really loved. And like I said, a big part of the brand is making sure like it's like Instagram worthy, it's aesthetic, like you want to take photos of it. That's a great way of being like, if someone had the box of their Merlot holding that in front of the window with that in the background, then everything's like instantly recognizable. And when someone goes to Belgium and they see the store, they know it's let them out.
Yep. And just like also just like the once again the realness of it all. It pays to just see something in an execution that it maybe otherwise wasn't even considered. Um,
Yeah. And even like with the store sign, like it's great to see how legible things will look. Obviously, there's like a line where obviously it's not real life, but we can see how that would scale really nicely.
mhm.
And it also gives the client, because there's one thing to put everything in guidelines being like, don't use your logo here, use it here, and things like that. But when they can see it in action, it gives them that confidence that when they go to send this off, it will look good on the store sign and there's no confusion about which one to use. Clients always value like your recommendation and not just giving them the files and then being like, good luck with that. Like if you give them
Yeah.
some more guidance in terms of like what things to use and where, then that will give them a lot of confidence. Like things like
So we have
this.
about 5 minutes left. I'm seeing that Larissa's asking, where do you get your mockups from?
So I literally get them from everywhere, but a lot of these are from Mockup World, I believe. And then I also like this one's from Bendito Mockup. I know that for sure. Um, I'm trying to think where else. Free Pick, I used to use a lot, so some of these are from there. Like I have a folder on my laptop called mockups, and I like to rotate between them. Like things like this, like a lot of my clients are going to have like their brand in real life, so it's good to just have like a classic store sign one on hand. Trying to think where else. A little bit of everywhere. Create
Yeah.
Tomb is really good as well, and they have a lot of free mock-ups, so I'd recommend checking them out.
And so then when you're presenting these, do these tend to be in PDFs that you're kind of emailing off? Are you putting them into slides that you're then kind of like on a Zoom call and you're like flipping through them with a client? What is the final presentation of this?
So yeah, I'll put all of this together. So everything that I've shown you guys now and these mock-ups will go into like the first draft proposal. So I'll put that together in a PDF and like the logo suite will be broken up into explanations, colorways. The color palette will be broken up into like exact usage. And then yeah, I'll round it off with the branding action. And then I'll put that into a PDF and upload that to Notion. I use Notion for literally everything from my own like workspace to
Oh,
like the
that's how you keep
client
organized?
project. Yeah, super organized. I think I'm like organized to a perfectionist level where it's like not helpful, but all of my clients, honestly, no, it's like I'm a bit too much of a perfectionist sometimes, but in this case, it's like handy. So every client will be onboarded with their Notion portal from the beginning. So like contracts live there, invoices live there, like FAQs are already in there, how to contact me, and then they'll have a section for the project uploads. So when there's a new presentation, I'll drop them an email and just say, if you head to this section, then you'll find your like new
Gosh, you're
presentation
such
under this
a
tab.
good business person. It's crazy. I'm learning so much. I'm like, well, I'm out of control. My clients are just like thrown to the wind when in comparison to you.
Yeah, obviously I'm very
Very cool.
streamlined, but it honestly it's helpful. Like if you don't have a project portal yet, get one because it will just save your life. And then even for you, like on your side, when you're going through like how many clients, everyone has an organized place. You're not running through files on your computer. So yeah, and then they will have like a drop down tab saying like leave feedback here. And then when they open that, it'll open a page where I've got the prompts ready for them. So it's super clear feedback. I never have like really vague anything because I'm giving them the prompts. And then they'll leave their feedback and it will give them the opportunity to ask for any changes or anything like that. And then obviously they're welcome to like save the PDFs and everything. So we'll work exclusively within Notion for literally everything.
Great. All right. Well, that puts us just, believe it or not, just at about time. I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show and walking us through so much. I mean, some of my favorite things that I learned. I mean, definitely the process of how you walk clients through everything. I learned a lot. I loved how you presented um, your work in a really creative form and be able to keep things exciting even when like dealing with color. I love how you presented your color. Love the idea of having an intake form. I think that's a really good call out.
Yeah.
How you are adjusting type to be able to add some personality and uniqueness to each logo is really smart. Sourcing mockups, so many things. And we'll see if anyone in chat also sounds off on anything that they're really excited about that they learned. I know that we also talked a little about accessibility. We talked about um, lots of things. So, what can we? Obviously, we have your website that we can always check out. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and pull that up just in this last minute. It's digitalsbyjana.com. And are you currently still open for work? Should people reach out to you on the website if they're looking for anything? Is there anything in particular that you want to be like, I would love to work on this? Um,
Yeah, you can inquire on my website. I am open for bookings from like mid-April, mid to late April. So if you're interested, then definitely log your interest now and I'll get back to you ASAP. My form is very streamlined. So yeah, and if you have any questions, you can drop me an email, or a DM on Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram, so you can always find me over there doing something.
which is also all linked at the bottom of your page as well.
Yeah.
Mind you, I promise we do follow you. I'm just not logged in right now. But this is also a really great place. Joe and the Juice, that's cool. I used to go when I worked on FiDi. I used to go to Joe and the Juice, so that's very cool. And so yeah, if you need John to give her a call. Yeah, thank you so much. Make sure you guys stay tuned. We are still going to be live. We'll be back in just a few minutes with a creator and designer news show. Thank you again to Jannah, and we'll see you all real soon.
Bye.
Bye.